If you've seen My Dress Up Darling, you'll likely find this manga reminiscent of the concept. Loser boy obsessed with niche hobby starts hanging out with the popular girl. Then they live happily ever after. Or not, because that happens too. My internal conflicts aside, we're introduced to our protagonist, a closet otaku, age 15, Otakura Kouichi. Seriously? Come on. Middle school was rough for Otakura, constantly hearing negative remarks about his hobbies, so he decided to hide them in high school by playing the average Joe with glasses. While scrolling through his phone, he comments on the release of a new figurine, which he visibly and audibly is excited about. Lost in thought, our protagonist fails to notice a blonde female student trying to get his attention, quite fittingly referring to him as Otaku-Kun. Returning to the third dimension, Otakura looks around, asking his blonde peer if he's the Otaku-Kun. She points out there's no one else present to claim the title, as the other students have already gone home. This is Narumi Yue, who happens to sit diagonally behind Otaku-Kun. Reading this for a second time and writing the script, I'm just now realizing he got the wrong idea about her calling him Otaku-Kun. She meant it as a nickname, not an insult. Then again, can you blame me for thinking otherwise? I mean, come on. An otaku with the last name Otakura? Now that's some grade A cheese. Besides, it's barely been 2 weeks since the entrance ceremony. How could she possibly know he's an otaku? In effort to do some damage control, our dear Otaku-Kun attempts to disassociate his last name from his hobby, to no avail, as Narumi completely disregards his explanation, mentioning the girl he was drawing during class. Surprised and embarrassed at being caught, Otakura realized he overlooked the diagonal view from behind him, while in reality, he failed to block anyone from seeing. Flustered, he spouts being a gal, he figured she would be too occupied with her phone, asleep, or something along those lines to notice what he was up to, which is quite the prejudiced assumption. Transitioning out of his sudden outburst, he asked if she needed something. Grinning from cheek to cheek, Narumi displays her long painted nails, asking for his thoughts on how crazy they are, which upon closer inspection, look nothing short of a crime scene. How can someone who calls a stranger an otaku call something else crazy, he wonders. While possible she had no ill intent, those nails are atrocious, totally crazy, and not artistic at all. With maximum effort not to offend, our cherry-picking boy simply declares it a very unique design. Translation? Ugly as f***. This comment doesn't seem to come as a surprise to Narumi, as she simply replies with, "I thought so," which Otakura isn't sure the meaning of. Whipping her phone out with gal animations, Narumi shows Otaku-Kun the reference she was attempting to follow, while placing her hand on his shoulder and getting up close so he can see the post, which immediately puts our protagonist on alert, but then he's dazzled by the nails in the photo. This is totally crazy. Artistically, after watching a few videos, Narumi tried to copy the design herself, which to her surprise, but not mine, it came out disastrous. Believing others would feed into her delusion, Narumi decided to ask their thoughts on her nails, thinking they would say hers looked good too, which would explain this random encounter. This revelation prompted our protagonist to apologize and feel glad he didn't share his true thoughts. He attempts to shuffle his way out of the conversation, but watch out, here comes Narumi from the top rope, halting his getaway and asking if he can make the nail art with his drawing skills. Not gonna lie, this looks a bit aggressive. Sweating profusely from the sudden request, Otakura tries to explain there are differences between drawing and painting nails. Undeterred, Narumi turns on the feminine charm, among other things. Narumi begs for him to at least give it a try. Setting his lower thoughts aside, Otakura begins analyzing the request, realizing the similarities to painting plastic models, which so happens to be one of his hobbies. With him in silent thought, Narumi began to believe her request to be impossible. Done with his analysis, our protagonist agrees to paint our gal's nails. Overjoyed, Narumi grabs his hands, sending him blasting off again. In effort to guard what's left of his dignity, Otakura requests that his class activities remain confidential. Narumi promises not to tell anyone and thanks him for taking on the request. With that out the way, she proceeds to snap the fake nails off one by one, leaving our protagonist shocked by the horrific sight, asking her what has she done, which she explains she simply peeled off the fake nails, finally allowing Otakura to understand they can be applied and removed, meaning his task is simply to paint the fake nails. As to always have a reference, Narumi asked for his Instagram in order to send him the photo, which turns out he's never had one. So alternatively, they exchanged contacts, not only a first for our protagonist, but with a kind gal to boot. After parting ways, we transition to our protagonist at home researching for the project. Step 1 is getting the polish off the fake nails, leading him to discover how expensive polish remover is. So he comes up with an alternative by using paint thinner. Wetting a towel, he goes to town rubbing off Narumi's questionable work, bringing him newfound understanding on how hard it is to be a gal. 30 minutes later, he finally has them all cleaned, which took so long because of how many layers there were, so he'll remember not to do the same. Step 2 would be to paint the nails with the plastic paint, which cannot be peeled off. Not sure if Narumi would approve, he decides to ask her directly. This leads to a series of text message revisions. Not wanting to sound too stiff or overly familiar, this process might take all night. With no experience talking to girls, let alone a gal, we find our protagonist flipping through mangas and light novels for clues. His social crisis is interrupted by the sound of an incoming message. It's Narumi checking if he's still alive, while letting him know she just got out of the bath, causing an explosive reaction from our protagonist, getting the attention of his mother and possibly the neighbors too. He dropped his phone, panicking away as if it was a bug, not knowing what to do, knowing she knows he saw the photo she sent. Trying to keep his composure, he replies with a yes, "I'm awake," while also asking her thoughts on the paint being permanent. What a boring reply, he thinks to himself, stressing not to come off as a lecher. Narumi texts her approval and asks how long it will take. Factoring having a dryer for plastic models, Otakura replies he can have it done by tomorrow, which surprises Narumi, expressing how amazing Otaku-Kun is. Considering how excited she is, Otakura decides he should get started right away, letting her know he might be slow to reply. Now it's time to lock in. The morning comes and we see a sleepy otaku making his way to school. We discover he stayed up to work on the nails and ended up coming to school early. So much so, there's hardly anyone there yet, which surprises him even more to be greeted by Narumi as he enters the classroom. They both hid the fact that they simply couldn't wait for the finished product reveal. Setting the stage, Otakura states he's proud of how they turned out, displaying his work for her judgment. Electrified by their beauty, Narumi fawns over their cuteness, asking if she can truly have them, which he replies, of course, that is their purpose. Ecstatic, Narumi asks if she can put them on immediately, which Otakura confirms indeed she can, as she scrambles to find what she needs to put them on. Otakura is glad to see how happy she is, signaling a success. Finally having them installed, Narumi yet again puts her nails on display for critique, although this time, there's no doubt they are indeed totally crazy, artistically. Wanting to commemorate the occasion, Narumi grabs Otakura and leads him to the window to snap a photo, not realizing she almost caused a fatality. After adoring the photo, she noticed there are lots of people entering the school gates. In particular, she sees a friend from another class telling Otaku-Kun she's going to say hi, which he responds not to mind him, so she scurries through the halls to meet up with her friend Rico. Now that the hype has finally died down, our protagonist is sleepy all over again. Suddenly, he hears an incoming message from Narumi, thanking him, with the photo of them attached telling him he's very nice. And so, this marked the beginning of the relationship between Otakura Kouichi and Narumi Yua, which was by no means a secret. But what did you expect?